So today I want to talk about the concept of ethics in Buddhism. And, I know from experience that a lot of people just went, shh, just super tight, right? Instantly when we talk about ethics. I know in my past, ethics really just meant a big list of rules about what I was supposed to do and what I was not supposed to do, or what was good and bad. And then I got to deal with and wrestle with the fact that I was pretty much bad because I couldn't keep up with a list of rules and do them all the time. And so ethics in a lot of other traditions that are the traditions that I was experienced with were really just a setup, a complete framework for punishing myself. In Buddhism, in this path, it's funny that we even use the word ethics because there's not such a word in the Buddha's language in Pali or in Sanskrit. They don't actually have a word that directly translates to ethics. So the word that they use most often in the text is sila, S-I-L-A. And I'll read you this quote about what that means. The word actually means something more like moral discipline. Someone has sila when they, having made a commitment to follow a certain set of moral rules, she is actually disposed to follow those rules. So it's more a story about determining what I think is important, what values I think are important, and then my commitment to following what I have chosen as values. And so it's not good or bad, right or wrong. It's about my commitment, really. It's a story about commitment. I think some ground rules about sila or ethics might be important. So the first thing to think about it is that it's a practice. Right? It is something for you to take into your daily life, into your meditation practice, everywhere you go, and then work with it. It's not given to you as a commandment, do this, don't do that. It's, here's the thought, why don't you go see what this looks like if you actually try to do it? Put it into practice. And I think that's a real nod to the reality of life. Life is complicated. We don't live in a place where everything is cut and dry, black and white, easy to do. So we just get a set of rules and just do those and it's easy, right? Everything kind of gets complicated because other people are involved. When we get to some of these ideas about what your ethics might be, we've got lots of suggestions in the texts, and a lot of those are behind me up here. It gets real hard. And we'll talk about what that is. But just know that this is a practice for you to work with. Right? It's not right or wrong answer. How we evaluate what we might take as ethical principles is all about whether it's leading towards our liberation or whether it's leading away from our liberation. That's the sort of signpost or guideline you want to use when you're evaluating. Is this taking me towards the goal of liberation or is it taking me away? And to be clear about liberation, what we're talking about is the end of clinging, aversion, reactivity that shows up in our daily lives. When something happens and we have this knee-jerk reaction and then we go off on a tangent or go crazy and create all kinds of extra suffering, that's what we're trying to calm down, cool down, get rid of. Another way of phrasing that in the positive sense of what we're not going to have is that we're going to have happiness independent of conditions. So whatever's going on, we're going to be okay or possibly even happy regardless of what's showing up in our lives. Right? That's liberation. And so then you look at and evaluate these ideas, and are they taking me towards that, or are they not? And that's how we begin to pick out our ethical framework. Right? This is a quote on that. This is from the Advice to Rahula. So this is the Buddha talking to his son who became a monastic at the age of 8. I don't know exactly how old he was when they were having this conversation. Well, this is what he said. He said, "When you reflect, if you know, this action that I wish to do with the body would lead to my own affliction, or to the affliction of others, or to the affliction of both, it is an unwholesome bodily action with painful consequences, with painful results, then you should definitely not do such an action with the body." It's like you go in with the shoulder pain to the doctor and you say, "Doctor, it hurts when I do this." And the doctor says, "Don't do that." Right? Don't do that. And he says, "But when you reflect, if you know, this action that I wish to do with the body would not lead to my own affliction, or to the affliction of others, or the affliction of both. It is a wholesome bodily action with pleasant consequences, with pleasant results. Then you may do such an action with the body." I think there's just so much in there that is very different to the way I approach the world. The first thing he says is when you reflect on XYZ. It's not the Buddha saying when I reflect on when you do that, right? It's you. You're doing it. Now you need to reflect on what you're doing and how it impacts you. And then what are you considering? You're considering whether it's causing pain and suffering to you, to other people, or both you and other people, or is it leading you again towards liberation? There it is. So that's why it's a practice. He didn't say just go do this. He said go inspect and figure it out. And I love that. And so we'll get into some of the ideas now about what are some ethical principles that might be suggested that you can investigate and work with. I like the Eightfold Path is here. So in Buddhism we have, there's foundational teachings, the Four Noble Truths, and the fourth one of those is the Eightfold Path. This is the foundation of all of Buddhism everywhere. Okay? And the Eightfold Path has these different components about how you achieve liberation. But they're traditionally broken into the threefold training on the left, 3 groups of trainings. And the first one is the ethics. We talked about this, a weird word that they used, of speech, action, and livelihood. So if we think about what that means, is okay, how does my speech impact myself and others when I speak? What I do, the actions that I take, and then livelihood, how I make my living, has a big impact, obviously, on, because we spend so much time there. Is what I'm doing leading towards my liberation, or is it taking me away? Then we have these other pieces, the meditation piece. This is the part that we like a lot in modern Western society. We like to meditate. We get the, MBSR and other, everybody's got it. Good Housekeeping had a piece on meditation the other day. It's pop science, popular culture. And it's really true that a lot of people who come into this path here in the West are just focused on meditation. It's how do I make my mind calm down? How do I get quiet in my brain? And it's important. All right, meditation is important. It's an important piece of the path. But I just want to point out there are 8 factors. And if you look at it, 3 of them are the ethics and 3 of them are the meditation. So it has equal weight. Right? Equal weight in the practice. And the last 2 are your wisdom factors. They're concerned with how you view the world. Because fundamentally, to get where we're going, we have to change the way we interact with the world. So those three there, speech, action, and livelihood, are some ideas that you might take as ethical precepts or ethical objects, ethical meditation practices. I think for me, they show up most readily in the 5 precepts. So we have 5 training precepts. That's on the left over here. For lay practitioners in our tradition, the tradition we teach here. And again, they're given as practice objects. Here's an idea that we think might be fruitful. Now go take that, see what it looks like in your life, and see what it's doing for you and how you implement it. And so the precepts are given in this formula of, I vow to abstain from something or other. All right. But if you do it in the Pali, the language of the Buddha, you flip the whole sentence around. So it's the something or other, and then I vow to abstain from. Or I undertake the training precept to abstain from, etc., etc. But anyway, that's how it's done. And the first one is killing. We often refer to this as non-harm. I know I did an intention talk right before New Year's. I spent a lot of time on this, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it this morning. But just imagine for a moment that you decided to take on this ethical precept of non-killing, non-harming, and what that would look like. And on the surface, it's pretty obvious. Don't kill people. Can you make it through the day without killing anybody today? And then you try again tomorrow and see how it goes. And some days are easier than others, right? Especially when we're snowed in. But that's the surface level of the precept, right? Once you start working with it and you really begin to examine even the word, even if you keep the word killing and don't switch to the word non-harming, what does it mean, right? Because I can tell you right now, there is a group of people who vote differently than I do, and for the most part, I killed them in my mind, right? As far as I'm concerned, they are dead to me. I don't care what they think. I don't care what they want. I'd prefer they didn't even exist. I have killed them in my mind when I am not paying attention. And then all the other ways in which I kill or harm others throughout the day. And there's countless opportunity. And so, if I can take this practice and really begin to examine it, what would it do for me? How would it change things? Well, I can tell you right now that as I work with that other group of people who votes differently than I do, right? By when I am not mindful and not paying attention, I'm having this point of view that I'm killing them in my mind, I am creating all manner of suffering, right? The fact that they continue to exist and vote differently than I do hurts me because I won't let it go, because I won't work with this ethical precept, because I am not practicing non-harming. And when I really dig in there, what it's doing is creating self and other, this continuous contradiction that's not how the world is. It is a collective. It is a we. Everything I do on a daily basis relies on others. When I want to get around, I am driving in a car. I didn't build that car, right? I didn't build the parts that go into the car. And it takes gas, which I didn't, go drill out of the ground. And I drive it on roads that somebody made, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I want to eat today. I did not grow any food. I did not harvest any food. On the great level, that's like really obvious stuff. But then on a very micro level, it's like, okay, also, it would be really hard for me to be where I am in my life without my lovely wife who supports me and takes care of me in a lot of ways. And it would be really hard for me to be up here today if it weren't for teachers and teachings that were powerful to me. And so everywhere I go, like, I am connected to all kinds of people. And so when I kill them in my mind, I harm myself. So that doesn't lead me towards liberation, that leads me away from liberation. There it is. And then you can work your way through the rest of these practices and just see how they show up in your life and what they mean to you and how they're affecting your path. The speech one, right, is false speech. So that, again, for service level is lying. Lying can be problematic. But again, there's also a place, again, for exploring. So as a lot of you know, that my mother-in-law lives with us right now, and she has dementia. And for me, it's been a lovely experience. She has a very social personality. She's really generally a happy person. But she can't remember how to put on her seatbelt. The other day we had a bunch of errands to run. We got in and out of the car like 15 times, and not a single time could she remember how to put on her seatbelt. It's just a bad day. But when I'm thinking about lying, comes up this little thing, she says, I don't want to be a burden, and I don't want to impose on you. And here I am, I got to get around the car and go buckle her in 15 times in a day. You're not a burden, Mom. And there's this part where it's a little bit of a white lie. Just a little bit. There's the other part where it's absolutely true because I find her joyful. And every time I say, let's go walk the dog, she is excited about walking the dog. That's her jam. But yeah, practice with it. How is it that in my speech I am harming myself, harming others, therefore leading away from liberation or leading towards? It's not obvious all the time, is all I'm saying. We've got another lovely example. I didn't write it on the board because I was tired of writing and out of room. But another idea of ethical precepts that you might examine for yourself in the texts are the 10 paramis or paramitas, the 10 perfections or 10 transcendences. Buddhists, we love lists. We got a million of them. There was another tenfold 10 wisdoms list that would fall in here too. I just chose this list of 10 instead. All right, the first one is of this list of 10 is generosity, dana, and sila. This idea of proper conduct or moral commitment. Nakama parami, which is renunciation, letting go of things as a practice, a moral or ethical precept. Panya, wisdom or discernment. That one also happens to be down here. Viraya, we got energy, diligence, effort. So it's a different word, so it's not technically in this list, but it is in this list. Effort is there. Kanti, patience or tolerance as an ethical precept. What would that do for your practice and your liberation if you could have a little more patience? I find it fascinating, patience. My wife and I talk about this, and a lot of times, particularly with her mother, she's like, you've got way more patience than I do. No, it's real situational. I got plenty of patience for your mom, and I have zero patience when somebody cuts me off in traffic. Right? There's a practice principle, right? Because again, the guy cuts me off, and I'm in my car fuming, wondering how I can do a pit maneuver and send him off into the ditch. Suffering. I'm creating all the suffering in the world right here on my side. It's not leading me to liberation. But I'm working on it. I'm still in progress. Or as Steve Harvey would say, y'all pray for me. God ain't done with me yet. Right? I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it. Satya parami, truthfulness or honesty. Aditana parami, determination. I like this one. This is another one that I think is crazy. It's like, can you get some determination or discipline? For me, that shows up around like meditation practice. I meditate a lot for sure, but I would love to have a much more consistent daily meditation practice. That'd be lovely. I know what it does for me. I know how I feel after I meditate, etc., etc. I've been doing it a long time, and I'm even up here telling you to do it. So develop it. See what it looks like. Metta. So we did that's loving kindness, goodwill, or friendliness. We did the end of the meditation was metta practice there. That's the formal practice of that ethical precept. And what would it be like if we just had a little more kindness on a daily basis that lead us towards or away from? These are ideas. And the last one on this list is equanimity, upekkha. That's balance. That's how I think of it. The word I use is balance. It's this, I like this word, serenity. The ability to just be okay when things are not the way you would want them to be. Right. It's also, equanimity comes up in dealing with people who are codependent. Right? You can't make other people do what you want them to do, regardless of how good for them it would be. Can you be okay with that? Can you hold your line? And so these are some examples. There's also the 4 Brahma Viharas, the 4 official meditations that we do that work on developing qualities of the heart. So again, there's loving kindness that we did. There is compassion meditation, which is karuna. There is appreciative joy, which is mudita. Appreciative joy is taking joy in other people's joy. So it's not just developing joy. That's cool too. That might be useful. It might not. You can check that out and see what that's like. But really deeply enjoying it when other people are having happiness or success or whatever. The Dalai Lama talks about that one, and he says, when I take joy in my own successes and happiness, I have a limited number of opportunities. And that's because life is difficult. But there are 7 billion people on the planet, and if I could take joy when other people are having joy, it would be a limitless supply of joy. Somebody, somewhere, is having success and happiness. If I can have happiness for them, I can have happiness too. And then the last practice is upekkha, this equanimity practice, this balance practice. Those are also examples of ways you might practice with ethics. So in a formal meditation way, I might practice with ethics. So then the question comes down to, that all sounds great, Don, but why do I want to practice with ethics? Why do I want to do this? And obviously you've heard a little bit. This topic came up for me recently. I was engaged with another Buddhist person who happens to be a teacher, and deeply realized in meditation. They've gone way deep in meditation. They got maybe 30 or so, maybe 35 at this point, years of practice. Meditative attainments out the wazoo. And yet, I had cause to notice this teacher being a jerk to a student. I mean, it was just completely uncalled for. There's a tradition in Buddhism that's about like saying shocking things to get people to wake up suddenly. Like if you see the Buddha walking down the street, kill the Buddha. Right? Or, you're sitting in meditation, you're facing the wall, you're doing your zazen, and they walk around and whack you over the shoulder. Right? Because your posture isn't great, because they're trying to get you to wake up. That's one thing. What this guy did was not that. Right? And so it reminded me, oh yeah, we do this right here. We work on ethics because we need to balance our path. Right? It cannot be all meditation all the time. Because what that will do is it will lead you astray. You get really good at concentrating. You get really great powers of mind and the ability to direct your attention, concentrate, and then you go use it for anything under the sun. One of my teachers, Shinzen Young, he talks about his model of the path is that a lot of, pretty much all religious paths talk about everything is ascending. You're going up. You're going higher. You're going to nibbana. You're going to liberation up, right? He likes the idea, he likes to flip it upside down. You can imagine it just like the earth. And we're up here in regular, ordinary existence. We're walking on the surface of the earth, right? We're walking along the surface. And then when we begin to practice, we go down. And what's down here is the source. Whatever that means to you, the source of experience, the source of everything, the source is down here. We turn and we go down. Right? And we practice, we're going down towards the source. And you can go at all kinds of different angles, on different tangents, but it would be optimal if you would just go straight down. And what he says is he notices a lot of people who practice a lot of meditation but aren't balanced with this ethics thing is they'll go down, they'll go straight down for a long time, and then they will turn exactly 90 degrees and start going out and exploring all kinds of things. Most commonly, money, fame, and power. Because they have this tool now that a lot of people don't have, a really ability to concentrate and direct the mind. And it can be very useful. You can get a real advantage on the rest of your competition with your well-trained mind. Another possibility is in Buddhist texts, there's this idea of the realms of power, spiritual power, things like telekinesis, being able to be in more than one place at one time, levitation, all kinds of stuff, right? Whether those actually exist or whether you're just making it up in your mind, those are states of mind, who knows? But that's what happens here too in this realm. We're supposed to be going straight down, but we've turned off to the side to go explore all this fun stuff. Typically that's happening when we're meditating. Right? States of mind we're having when we're meditating. Whatever it is, it distracts us away. And it's the ethics component. It's our commitment to this ethics that stops us from doing that keeps us going down. Keep going towards the source. You know, I said it a million times, but it's about, is it leading you towards your liberation or not? Is it making you more happy and joyful in your life, less reactive, less aversive? These are how you develop your awareness of what your practice is doing. If you're not paying attention to whether it's leading you towards liberation or not, how would you know which direction you're going? These are the yardsticks you use to figure out what your practice is doing, how it's impacting your life. Also, we have this concept of karma in Buddhism. This is involved here, right? The notion that when I do or say something, my intentions set my karma, right? And so if I have good intentions when I'm doing stuff, then I have good karma. And the theory is at some point that karma will reach fruition and good stuff will happen in my life. And then the opposite is true as well. If I'm doing stuff and I have bad intentions, that means I have bad karma, and then some point in the future that will reach fruition and bad stuff will happen, right? I don't know that it exactly happens like that, but I do think, I set this sort of stage about what's going to happen in my life, what's going to show up in my life by how I behave. And if in general I am good and kind and nice to people, what will happen is that they will in turn relate to me in the same way, in a good and kind and nice way. And if I relate to people in a negative, harmful, bad karma sort of way, then when I continue to interact with them, it's very likely I'm going to get bad results. Right? It's pretty simple when I think about it that way. And maybe it has this larger context too, that it carries throughout my life. Here's another quote from Majjhima Nikaya 19 from the Buddha. He says, "As I abided thus, diligent, ardent, and resolute, a thought of renunciation arose in me, and I understood thus. This thought of renunciation has arisen in me. This does not lead to my own affliction or to others' affliction or to the affliction of both. It aids wisdom, It does not cause difficulties, and it leads to nirvana. And then he goes on, he has several of these qualities that came up. As I abided thus, diligent, ardent, and resolute, the thought of non-ill will arose in me. And likewise, the thought of non-cruelty arose in me. And so it does not lead to my own affliction or to others' affliction or the affliction of both. It aids wisdom. It does not cause difficulties and leads to nibbana. He says, bhikkhus, and in this case, we are the bhikkhus, we are the students. Whatever a bhikkhu frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of his mind. If he frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of renunciation, he has abandoned the thought of sensual desire to cultivate the thought of renunciation, then his mind inclines to thoughts of renunciation. Likewise, if he frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of non-ill will, or upon thoughts of non-cruelty, he's abandoned the thoughts of cruelty to cultivate the thought of non-cruelty, and then his mind inclines to thoughts of non-cruelty. So what he's saying is what we kind of already know through Western science. Like, also, if I am practicing these things, the more I practice, the more they will show up. Right? If I am doing this investigation, as he's doing, about, I had a thought, is it a thought that's leading me towards liberation or not? The more I do that exercise, the more the thoughts that lead to liberation will show up. The more often then that I am going to begin to behave in those ways. And I think that's the fundamental thing, right? As we do all of this work to investigate what's important to us, and we investigate what's arising, etc., so that eventually it begins to come back out of us into the world. And that's one of the things I love about Buddhist practice, again, because we are all interconnected. A big part of what my practice should be about is how to help the others. Or the notion that my practice should be in benefit to all beings. Right? So I do this, one of these things that I do is I do this work around ethics so that it will change me internally, so that I will begin to change the way I behave with all of you. Thus, hopefully influencing you in beneficial and positive ways, leading you towards liberation and your own freedom from reactivity and suffering. And that's a big point. So, I'm going to end here with this sort of idea of a flow chart of how this works, right? So the first step is to observe and determine those qualities of being and action and intention that lead to your happiness, wholesomeness, or the reduction of suffering, right? That are leading towards liberation or the reduction of reactivity. You're going to make a commitment to pursue those ways of being or qualities of being. You're going to apply the ethics, the sila, the moral discipline to maintain your commitment. Then you begin to observe how maintaining that commitment impacts your life, or how not maintaining it impacts your life. And then lastly, you'll observe what that looks like as it shows up in your relationships. So those are some thoughts about ethics.
What's up, y'all? Reverend Mikey Noshel here from Wild Heart Meditation Center in Nashville, Tennessee. Thanks for checking us out. Do me a favor, please like and subscribe. And if you feel moved to leave a donation, you can do so at wildheartmeditationcenter.org or the Venmo link in the description. Peace and love.